Hello everyone, today we'll be making a scrolling platformer in Scratch. To start off, let's set up all the sprites we will need for this project. Rename the first sprite to main character. For this game, I'll use a pixelated Scratch cat as the player. I'm putting a when green flag click block and attaching a set size 50% to it. This will make our character a little smaller. Then, I use the Set Pixelate Effect block in the Looks tab to make the cat look more pixelated. Now, I'll set up two costumes, one facing forward and one facing backward. I named the first costume forward, and now I'll duplicate it and name the duplicate backwards. To make any character face backwards, select all the pieces with your cursor and click Flip Horizontal. Don't forget to add a Set Costume block and set it to the forward-facing costume. Next, we need foreground, midground, and background sprites. The foreground sprite is what the main character will jump around on, and the other two are for decoration. Finally, we will need a sprite for the lava in our game, the trophy at the end, and the windscreen. Let's make the backdrop sky blue as well. While we're at it, we can add these two blocks. This will start the game every time we press the green flag. Here, we can also set all the starting variables for our game. Delete the myVariable variable to start. Create 4 variables and name them in all caps since they never change while the game is played. They are acceleration, jump force, gravity, and resistance. I set acceleration to 2, jump force to 15, gravity to -1, and resistance to 0.8. You can set these to whatever you want, but I like these numbers. You can also test these later on once the physics engine for our cat is made. Now let's create the physics engine for our character. This may sound like a scary term, but it's actually very simple. It just makes the character move as though it were real life. It won't perfectly replicate, but it will be quite similar. Start by creating 3 new variables, ScreenX, SpeedX, and SpeedY. Make sure ScreenX is for all sprites, while SpeedX and SpeedY are for this sprite only. Hook up 3 setVariable2 blocks to a when I receive message event block. Set all the set variable blocks to 0. and set the WhenIReceiveMessage block to message 1. Add a show block and a go to block to make the character always start in one position. Set the go block to -150 for X and 0 for Y. Now, add a forever loop to repeat the code inside it for the rest of the game. Add a go to front layer block to make sure we can always see the main character on top. Let's also add some movement controls. We can add an if statement to check if either the right arrow key or the D key is pressed. Now, add a change variable by block and set the variable to speed x. Now set the number input to the right to acceleration variable from earlier. Now, we can copy this if statement for the move left controls by changing the if statement and multiplying the acceleration by -1. To add jumping, we add the usual if statement to check for the up arrow key or the W key. However, we also have to add an if statement to see if we are not moving at all on the y-axis, aka if we're on the ground. We don't want to be jumping in midair. Now, we add a set variable to block and set the variable to speed y, and the number input to jump force. Now, to make our character slow down when we don't have a key pressed, we need to add a set variable to block, where we set the variable speedx to speedx times resistance. This will slow our character down over time when we don't have a key pressed. Now here, we add the actual block that makes our character move in the x-axis, a change x by block, where we change x by speed x. We can do the same thing for y, except we change both for the y-axis. To add gravity, we can add an if statement to check if we are not touching the foreground. Then a change y by gravity block. We put this if statement in between the actual movement blocks. Now, I have a bunch of code that stops our character when we run into something in the y direction. You can pause the video here to copy it. But for now, I'll move on. To stop movement in the x direction, we copy the block of code for the y direction and replace it with the x-axis variables. And now, you have our physics engine all done. To test it out, go to the foreground sprite, open the costumes tab, and create a level to play around with the boxes. Once you are done, add this wall to the left side to make sure your character can't fall off the map, since there won't be any ground there. Also, go to the code tab and add these temporary 2 blocks to make sure the level is in the exact center of the screen. Press the green flag to play. If your character isn't moving around like mine, you may have missed something in the previous steps. Remember to make sure all of your levels are playable and easy to navigate. Now I'm going to create 3 more costumes in the foreground sprite, which are going to be the next 3 levels. That's what I'm going to call them. Now that we've done that, let's go to the stage and create a new variable for all sprites called backdrops. Let's also add a block to set the backdrops variable to 4, since we now have 4 levels that the character will move around on. This will help when we manage a lot of the visuals in the game later. Go back to the foreground sprite and create a new for this sprite only variable called ID. Delete these 2 blocks and copy this chunk of code. Basically, it creates a clone for each level in our game, and gives it its own ID number. This means we can make it move based on its ID number. You also have to copy this set of blocks. What it does is it makes each level move based on its ID number, and the ScreenX variable we made earlier. Now, hide all these variables except for ScreenX. Go into the game window and right-click the ScreenX variable. Now click Slider from the little drop-down menu. Right-click it again, but this time press the Change Slider Range, and set the maximum value to 2400. Press the green flag and mess with the slider to make sure all of your levels are there and in the right order. However, you notice that there's a little piece of each level sticking out when it isn't supposed to. One way you can fix this is by using invisible dots. Go to the Costumes tab on the foreground sprite and go to Costume 1. Now, use the paintbrush to add a little dot in the top left and right corners of the costume. Group these 2 dots together using the group button at the top. To make them invisible, click the fill color and go to the bottom of the menu and click the button to make them both transparent. Click the grouped visible dots and copy and paste them onto each costume in the foreground sprite. Now, test the levels again using the slider, and you should now notice how the game scrolls without any parts of the other levels sticking out. Go back to the main character's sprite and copy this bunch of blocks to change the character's costume, depending on the direction they're going. Great! Here, we will add the actual scrolling part of this scrolling platformer. Be careful, this has a lot of if statements, so follow along carefully. First, add a forever loop to check if the player is touching the edge. Add an if-else statement to check if we are above the bottom edge, and add a regular if statement to check if we're touching lava. I put the lava detecting in the wrong spot, so be ready to come back to it later. Inside the first else statement, add these two blocks to restart the game. Add these two same blocks to the body of the second if statement, which is the lava detection. Add another normal if statement to see if we are too high. We don't want the player flying through the levels. Add this next if-else statement to check if we are touching the left or the right edge. Now, add this code to the body of the if statement. Basically, it moves the character to the right while the levels move left, simulating the scrolling effect. It also checks if we get stuck in a piece of the ground while this happens. If it does, it moves the character in the opposite direction, dislodging it. Finally, copy this to the body of the else statement and flip all the directions to create the inverse for the right side. Now let's test it. It works pretty well. We actually die even though we don't fall off. Meaning we have to change this value from -120 to -150. If it still doesn't work for you, reduce it more. Don't reduce it too much, however, or else it won't work at all. Play around with the number until it works for you. Let's add the code for the midground and background sprites. Go to your midground sprite, pause the video, and copy this code. Now, copy this code for the background. This code does the same thing that the foreground sprite does, except it copies each midground and foreground sprite depending on how many levels we have. To make use of this code, let's add some design. Something happened to the original footage of making the visuals for the tree sprite, so I'm redoing it here. Go to the Costumes tab in the midground sprite. Add a costume and search Tree. Choose this one. Now, click the trunk and extend it all the way to the bottom. Drag over the whole tree and click the group button at the top. Now, copy and paste this tree 2 more times, and drag each of these trees to random heights. Duplicate the costume and randomize the position of the trees again. Delete the costume 1 costume, go to the code, and change this to tree 1. I'm redoing the background footage as well since it also got corrupted. For the background sprite, go to the Costumes tab and add a box. Make sure it stays in the middle and doesn't extend too far out in all directions except through the bottom. Choose the Node tool and add curves to this box. Make it look like mountains. When you're done, set the fill color to be a gradient. Then set the first color to white and the second to gray. Duplicate this costume twice and change the nodes in each mountain. Now, let's test our game. You may need to change this number to make sure the mountains show up on top of the trees. Let's go through our game and see if the number 7 works. Looks like it did, but there isn't a mountain here. Let's include an addition operator here that adds the number 1 to whatever the value of this is. That way, there will never be an empty spot without a mountain. If there's a problem with your game, rewind and redo this previous section. Now let's add lava to our game. Go to the foreground sprite to start, then drag both of these clumps of blocks over to the lava sprite and let go. This copies the same exact code to the lava sprite since they both do the exact same thing. Go back to the Costumes tab in the foreground sprite and add some orange rectangles to the levels that represent lava. When you are done, copy and paste them into the corresponding costumes in the lava sprite. I almost forgot. Go back to the Costumes tab in the foreground sprite and drag over the top. There should be those invisible dots we made earlier. Copy them into each lava costume, and there you go. We now have lava. Don't forget to test your game to make sure it isn't too hard. Now, there are a few problems in my game that I had just noticed. First of all, the layering is messed up again. If you aren't having a layering problem, you can skip ahead a little. I'm going to start by removing this block and changing this to back. I will also go to the midground sprite and change this to 6, but you may need to change it to a different number. I have also noticed that when I touch lava, it doesn't restart the game. Turns out, you have to go to the main character sprite and move this if statement down a little. This is very crucial, so don't forget to do it. Lastly, it's time to make the trophy and winning text. For the trophy, start by going to the Sounds tab and searching for the sound coin. Now pause the video to copy this code. After that, go into the Costumes tab and create a trophy or medal of some kind. I'll do a very low quality trophy, but you can be as creative as you want. Go to the foreground sprite and copy the invisible dots again to the trophy. This code animates the trophy and moves it to the last level. The thing is, we don't have a level for the trophy to spawn in, so let's create a new one. Add this wall to make sure the player can't fall off. And don't forget to go to the stage and change this number from 4 to 5. Let's test out our trophy by pressing the green flag. The trophy is stuck in the ground. Change this value until the trophy is at the Y level you want. I also think that my trophy is a little too large for my liking. So I'll go to the Costumes tab and drag over all of it and shrink it a little. I'll also move it over. There is also lava that shouldn't be here, and that's because of the number of costumes in the lava sprite. It doesn't match the number of costumes in the foreground sprite. Let's add a costume to fix that. It won't automatically update, but it will if we press the green flag again. Before we do that, however, let's test out the trophy script. It worked. It's meant to go to a blue screen. That's because we will add text that flies in from the bottom saying you won. Go back to the main character sprite and add these two small chunks of code. Basically, when the game is on, it will constantly reset the timer, meaning it will never go above 0. However, when the game ends, like when the stop all block is run in the trophy script, it won't be able to reset the timer, meaning it will go over 0. This means we can detect when the timer goes over 0 and trigger events, like the trophy and the winning text. To get the when timer greater than 0.1 block, grab the when loudness greater than 10 block and change the drop-down menu to timer. This means we can animate the text, like I just mentioned. Go to the Sounds tab in the Win text sprite and search for the sound win. Go back to the Code tab and pause the video to copy these two chunks of code. This if statement just makes sure the win text doesn't appear if you only press the stop button and have not completed the game. Now, all you have to do is add the actual win text and debug if necessary. Go to the Costumes tab, add an orange box and some black text saying you win. Tilt the box to make it more eye-catching. Also, make it very big. When you're done, drag over it all and hold down the down arrow until it's at the very bottom like this. Press the green flag to see if it all works. It all seems to work. I just forgot to copy the invisible dots a lot. Go to the foreground sprite and copy the invisible dots. Paste it to the 5th costume of the same sprite and all the costumes of the midground and background sprites. Don't forget to hide these variables so it looks clean and polished. That's it! Now you have a fully working platformer. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this Scratch project.